Thank you for watching CBSN Minnesota. I'm Liz Collin. More than 4,000 Minnesotans have died from COVID-19 since March. Numbers alone, sadly, don't tell the whole story. Over the next half hour, we will bring you some of the faces behind this pandemic. We begin with two beloved mothers and grandmothers who were pillars of their communities. Dorothy Heinrichs and Doris Rasmussen lived full lives, but their families told us their final days were especially difficult.
Such a proud Minnesotan.
Norwegian traditions were very much alive in Dorothy Heinrichs' kitchen.
She showed us love through food and butter.
Where lefse, kroomkake, and lutefisk were always on the menu.
One of her taglines was always, well, let's see, what have we got to eat around here?
Dorothy married the man she grew up with in LaPorte, Minnesota. Their love starting over letters Cal sent her while serving in World War II.
We still haven't seen those love letters to this day because they were so special and dear to her heart and private that she didn't want to share with the grandkids.
4 children turned to 7 grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren, a pack that became Dorothy's source of pride in her beloved Big Lake, 40 miles from Minneapolis.
And she just loved knowing everybody in Big Lake.
It's why her granddaughters believe the pandemic was especially hard for a personality like Dorothy's. No church, card club, or family drop-ins in the name of safety.
I think it made her feel lonely.
As the months wore on, her dementia seemed to get worse. Swelling in her legs forced their grandma into a nursing home where just days later she contracted COVID-19. Within a week, she blew kisses from her bed as a final farewell.
She really was the glue to our family.
A family grateful for her 94 years.
But we still weren't ready to say goodbye.
Still convinced Dorothy deserved more for her last chapter.
She was our special gal.
It gives me great pleasure to be able to preside over this ceremony.
We were there in December to see the Rasmussens side by side when Doris's husband Wilton was awarded medals for his service and sacrifice in World War II, parachuting from a plane defending Norway from the Nazis.
That's my wife. That's your wife, yeah?
Their admiration for each other captured on camera.
She always made sure that people knew what he did.
Their granddaughter Amber told us the love story started the first day Wilton returned to Minneapolis from war.
He had a sister or two in this boarding house where my grandma happened to be. Knocked on the door, and that was it.
Doris was a farm girl with a love of horses and travel.
I always thought of her as kind of a pioneer because she went to school in the 40s when that wasn't really a thing.
She went to work for the Dayton Hudson Corporation and Target before retiring. Her grandma's words still repeated today.
You have to work hard. Things will not be handed to you, and you need to work for them.
Doris suffered from dementia, and with COVID-19 concerns, she was kept apart from her husband in their long-term care facility and the rest of her family since March.
The worst case scenario, like the nightmare would be for one of them to get it.
At the end of May, Doris did. She died 8 days later.
You can't celebrate their life the way that you want to celebrate their life. You can't even say goodbye to them the way that you want to say goodbye to them.
Just 7 family members, including her devoted husband, laid her to rest at Fort Snelling. A sad end to a loyal life.
This disease is not fair.
Terry Klante, Teddy Girard, and Robert Strawberry will be remembered for their service. These were men who built long careers dedicated to helping others. Here are their stories.
He'd always drop everything he was doing, say, "What do you need, kid?"
Ricky Klante remembers his dad was always there for his family and friends, complete with a quick wit that put people at ease.
Funny.
Fun, a sense of humor, wonderful.
Terry was most proud of his Air Force service in Vietnam, where in 2 years he had too many close calls to count.
He just had that mentality like, COVID ain't gonna get me. I beat Vietnam.
But when he came home to recover from a successful quadruple bypass surgery in April, Terry realized something wasn't right.
He kept telling my mom, "I can't catch my breath. I should be able to catch my breath by now." By the 4th day, he goes, "I can't breathe at all. I got to get back to the hospital."
It's when he tested positive for COVID-19. Terry was transferred to Bethesda, the state's only dedicated hospital for COVID care.
The nurses and doctors worked fearlessly, not only for him, but all the patients that were there.
For 2 weeks, he was hooked up to a ventilator. His new and improved heart still no match to the powerful virus.
The last night he was with us, it just went downhill from there, and we got the call that there wasn't anything more that they could do for him.
A sudden decline that left his high school sweetheart and wife of 56 years heartbroken.
The hardest part is my mom didn't get to have closure. It wasn't because she couldn't go up there.
The Klantes will have a small service at Fort Snelling later this month where their dad will be laid to rest, as they remind others now to wear masks, wash hands, and let the people that matter most know how you feel.
Right at this moment in time, I'm rather numb.
Tara Girard feels out of tears for now, faced with the shock of losing a husband of 41 years.
It was a total of 9 days from the bad symptoms started happening. It was 9 days till he died.
It was the beginning of the month when Tara says she didn't feel well.
I actually thought maybe I had bronchitis.
2 days later, Teddy was in worse shape. Born with one kidney, her husband had diabetes and high blood pressure. Tara says both were in check as he had lost weight. And why he insisted on still working the job he had for 13 years as a security and baggage screener at MSP.
The problem with TSA is you can't socially distance.
Tara can't say for sure how their household was infected. Teddy tested positive for COVID-19 as soon as he arrived at Abbott Northwestern, with no good news in sight.
She kind of knew what was going to happen because of how quickly his organs were shutting down.
For days, his wife was kept away.
I just wanted to go in and hold his hand. I couldn't even do that.
Only allowed in for a few hours for a final goodbye.
What is it that you want people to learn from what happened to your husband?
I want people to learn, that it's for real.
Tired of how political it's become and how few masks she sometimes sees, Tara hopes the story of a husband, father, and grandfather serves as a reminder of just what real could mean.
We were supposed to get old together. We were supposed to have a 50th wedding anniversary. We were supposed to be one of those cute little old couples that still hold hands and walk around the street. People have to take this seriously.
You gotta take your experience and use it in the will of the Lord.
If you ever wanted to find him on a Sunday, you know where he was at.
From Genesis to Revelation, Robert Strawberry's sons will never forget how their father poured his time into studying the Bible.
He was always trying to help the people from the bottom try to get back to the top.
It started from his time serving in the Air Force in Vietnam to launching a restorative justice program at Malcolm X College in Chicago. Strawberry moved to Minneapolis in the 90s, where he planned the routes for holiday bell ringers and helped people in recovery find housing and jobs at the Salvation Army Harbor Lights.
Give people who have messed up their second and third and fourth chances another chance. That was always his thing. You never run out of chances.
Being diagnosed with lung cancer last year still wasn't enough to slow Sergeant Major Strawberry down.
Him and mask and gloves was constant.
While he worried about the pandemic, his sons say he still had work to do and people to help.
You're kind of looking at the thing from the wrong perspective.
Last month, after preaching on a Sunday, Strawberry complained he couldn't breathe.
That afternoon, we took him to the hospital and he just never recovered.
He died 6 days later, on October 25th at HCMC, after testing positive for COVID-19.
It's got to be a huge loss for your family just before the holidays.
It's a huge loss for our families, a huge loss for the community.
His sons want to remind us all to take this seriously and to improve someone else's life. A lesson learned daily, watching their dad. Still to come, she was a state fair favorite, the life of Ethel Peters and the memories she leaves connected to the Great Minnesota Get-Together, as we share more Faces of COVID next on CBSN Minnesota.
Family-run businesses across the state have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. Ethel Peters, Norman Feske, and Jeff Durant were all business owners who were known far and wide for their impact. All of them built unique careers for themselves and for their families. Take a look.
She was born on November 5th in 1932 in Collin, Minnesota.
From the family farm, Ethel Peters met her match in high school and married into a family state fairgoers know well.
My dad started working out there when he was 10 years old.
Peters' hot dog stand started as a promotion for the meat company 80 years ago, back when their dogs sold for 10 cents a piece and they'd power through 12,000 pounds.
That's a lot of hot dogs.
The two stands are now in their 6th generation at the state fair.
It's like a big family reunion come fair time to get to see everybody that a lot of them you don't see except for at the fair.
Known for her smile and selflessness, Ethel spent her days outside of the fair working as a medical tech and raising 4 girls.
Had a lot of different interests. She loved to play cards, loved to play bridge. She was a wonderful golfer.
She lost her husband 5 years ago. In February, Ethel moved into a senior living facility in Arizona. Just 1 month later, she ran a high fever and struggled to breathe.
By Monday, they put her on a respirator, and by Wednesday, she was gone. Lynn, called us all on her cell phone, and so we all got to say our goodbyes.
Ethel died on April 8th from COVID-19. Her family still doesn't know where she caught it.
People need to take it seriously.
As a family mourns their matriarch, and a fair reunion will forever be different.
He was really an entrepreneur.
Norman Feske worked in the corporate world as president and general manager of the once popular grocery wholesaler Fairway Foods.
He used to think, we should sit around the cabin and kind of think about the Dallas kind of thing, with the family empire and stuff.
Eventually working with his 6 kids to open mall gift stores, jewelry shops, and the very first video store in the Fargo-Moorhead area.
We were the first people to put him in the grocery stores and stuff, gas stations. His connection with Fairway Foods made that possible. It was all about business and family is what he was about.
Feske suffered from memory loss and moved from an assisted living facility to a nursing home within the last year. Todd worried more about his father as months passed and the COVID-19 pandemic showed no signs of slowing down.
When we heard about it, it was just he had the virus and he wasn't showing any symptoms, and other people in the nursing home had shown him too.
The news came just last week. Within a few days, Norman Feske struggled to breathe. He died on Sunday at a Fargo hospital at the age of 86.
I think that's why it's important for people to understand that this affects a lot of people and a lot of families. We're asking our most vulnerable citizens to be isolated and to live alone. And then we're asking them to die alone. And then we're asking those of us that grieve to do that alone too.
Todd believes we need to replace personal freedoms with personal responsibilities before it's too late for more people like his father.
If you wear your mask, I think you're a hero. You may save a life.
Not much the guy didn't do that he wasn't going to be about the best one out there.
He grew up a gifted athlete, as the best-rated catcher in the state, to making the world team for broomball. But Jeff Durant never forgot his roots from tiny Dayton, Minnesota, even when success came his way in business.
He started out sitting on the floor with a phone next to him, and probably 10, 12 years later, we were as big or biggest union tile contractor in the upper Midwest.
Durant was the D in CD Tile and Stone. From TCF Bank, the Guthrie, and MOA, their work is everywhere.
We weren't born to success. He just had a passion. He had a Post-it over his desk at home. Have I given enough?
From keeping sick employees on the payroll to paying for their medical bills, Rick believes his brother felt a certain guilt about all he had.
He was working every day. Every day.
And at 67 was still hard at it when Jeff came down with COVID last month.
He was very rigid in the protocols about the masks, the social distancing, the hand sanitizing.
Steroids and other therapeutics at Mercy Hospital for weeks weren't enough. Rick donned a hazmat suit to say a final goodbye at his brother's bedside and to thank the frontline workers methodically working through Minnesota's surge.
They're not hearing enough of that, Liz. This has got to be the close to working a triage in a war. In a war zone.
Rick's only wish now is their loss serves as a reminder of all that's at stake this holiday season.
I've tried to tell that to people. I just say, don't let this come to your doorstep.
Coming up, a Minnesotan cast right out of an old school Western.
As we conclude, we want to bring you some big personalities who lived a life full of twists and turns. Walt Brooks was a real-life cowboy in his Twin Cities town. And Tony Thiel built a football tradition in Battle Lake. They are both remembered for their personalities and persistent optimism.
He was always a fighter. He always fought for what he thought was right.
Like he was cast in an old Western, Walt Brooks donned a cowboy hat for decades as chief promoter of his small Dakota County town, whether it be through World Championship Booyah or a dandelion growing competition.
Silly things like that, to him, he thought was a way of bringing people together and a way of getting people to talk, especially about South St. Paul.
It's the place he bought a flower shop on a whim that he ran for 30 years. Walt's daughter Brenda works at a different one today, but remembers fondly her dad's big ideas.
Him and my mom went to Montana and on a vacation, and he decided that South St. Paul needed a rodeo.
Walt's ideas to promote us wasn't about Walt. it was about South St. Paul.
As mayor, Jimmy Francis was there on Saturday as folks lined the street to wave to the horse-drawn carriage that carried their idea guy to his final resting place.
How fitting during a pandemic when we can't really have a funeral inside. They brought it outside, and I think it was a really nice tribute to Walt.
It's hard to realize he's not here.
Brenda struggles with the sudden loss. Her dad seemed to be fine in a nursing home until COVID took his life in a few days at the hospital. Still wishing for a different ending to her dad's colorful story.
Everybody who's passed away from it also deserves recognition for their fight and their families.
A lot of my life wouldn't be as it is if it weren't for Tony Thiel.
Once a lineman for the Gophers, Ross Uckelberg played for Lou Holtz at the U of M. But it's his high school coach back home in Battle Lake that tops even his D1 days.
I don't know anyone that played for him that wouldn't have run through a brick wall for him. I've got 4 boys. My youngest son, name's Tony. There's a reason.
Tony Thiel started teaching and coaching in Battle Lake in 1966.
Math, Phy-Ed, little science over the years.
His daughter Sherry hearing from many about the man who never coddled and wasn't politically correct.
Well, I'm going to tell it like it is. That was always his thing. I'm going to tell you like it is.
Instead, he was honest about what you needed to do differently.
He was a straight shooter.
He was.
His Tonyisms, as they came to be called, are still repeated to this day.
If you haven't got common sense, then you haven't got anything. In practices, he always said, once some more, boys. We're going to do it once some more.
Once more helped pave the way to 2 state titles for his football team in 1974 and 77, an incredible feat for a town of less than 1,000 people. Thiel retired in 1994. He suffered strokes and memory loss in his later years. COVID-19 infected the nursing home where he lived in November.
His positive test came back on the Friday after Thanksgiving Day, and then we lost him that early Monday morning, November 30th.
That night, they turned the field lights on in his honor. A mentor who believed in passion and potential called up to a new coaching gig.
He's chewing on somebody upstairs. Let's put it that way. Right or wrong, you're going to know where you stand with Tony Thiel.
If you've lost a loved one to COVID-19 and would like to share their story, send an email to tips@wcco.com.